So with that, I would request Dr. Adluri to take it away from here and uh, deliver his talk on dharma and social justice in the Mahabharata. Welcome, Dr. Adluri, and I request you to take it forward from here.
Thank you, everyone, for inviting me, and thank you for all of you luminaries who I do not wish to disrespect, but at some point it's already 10:41 p.m. and if I'm not to be a Nishachara, I need to go to bed. So without further ado, Om Namo Narayana. Here is I would like to share my presentation, which I prepared for this Dharma Sankata. So I will share this. Can you see my slides? Meg?
It just came up and then now we are not able to again, but it did come up for a brief moment before it.
Okay, so why should I not be able to show this? Can you see it now?
Okay. Yes, we can see it now. We could just put it on full screen if that's possible. That would be great.
I am okay.
Yes, you're set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, because I'm the first speaker, I would like to clarify a few things about Dharma and what it means to me and the research I do. I am a Mahābhārata suprematist, so for me, the Mahābhārata is the highest text, and so this is what I work with. So I will be limiting my my comments to the Mahābhārata, and I'm so grateful to Meg for showing the previous rich history of Dharma in Indian literature. The Mahābhārata is unequivocally a Dharma text. Vyasa makes a final appearance at the end of the text proclaiming his chief message. This is the 18th Parvan, chapter 5, Svargarohana Parvan. With arms uplifted, I'm crying aloud, but no one listens to me. There is artha and kama, but only in accordance with dharma. Then why is it that dharma is not resorted to? Never should one abandon dharma, either on account of pleasure, or on account of fear, or on account of greed, or even for the sake of one's own life. Dharma is eternal, pleasure and pain are ephemeral. Jiva is continual, but its cause is terminal. Who is this Vyasa? There is some debate about whether a person wrote the Mahābhārata and his name was Vyasa. How could one person write it, and so on. But Vaishampayana, as well in the inner frame, as well as of the Mahābhārata, as well as Grashavas in the outer frame, make explicit reference to Vyasa as someone who conceived after intense tapas, the Mahābhārata, and he taught it to his student, 5 of them, but here we are concerned with Vaishampayana, and Grashavas has heard it from Vaishampayana with Vyasa present. So the whole idea of reading Mahābhārata as a conglomerate text of many different things thrown together, a library, an encyclopedia, a cathedral, a forest. I mean, the metaphors have been just out of control. We cannot take Vyasa out because the frames will collapse and large sections of the text that state that Vyasa is the author will be negated. So we are less interested in whether such a person exists outside the text. We'll leave that to the speculative scholars wish to speculate about it. There is no harm in speculation, but the speculation should not be to such an extent that we deny there is a Vyasa. So from now onwards, I will use Vyasa as a cipher for that authorial voice, the authority of the text, because the text draws its authority by naming Vyasa. So we'll leave it at that. Next slide. So to explain what Dharma is, we cannot come up with a better introduction to this than Shankaracharya's introduction in the Uphold of the Bhagavad-gita. Here Shankaracharya says, this is Gambhirananda's translation, after projecting this world and desiring to ensure its stability, that is where the word dharma is, this upholding, the stability, how Brahman upholds Jagat, how Brahman upholds things, and this upholding itself is dharma. He, the Lord, first created the Prajapatis, such as Marichi and others, and made them follow the dharma characterized by action, such as rights and duties as revealed in the Vedas. This is the Karma Kanda. Then, having created others, namely Sanaka, Sanandana, and Sanat Sujata, as you will soon meet him, he made them espouse the dharma characterized by renunciation and distinguished by knowledge and detachment. For the dharma revealed in the Vedas is of two kinds. One, characterized by action, and other by renunciation. We can give names to these two. Dharma is twofold, pravritti dharma and nivritti dharma. The former is operative in rituals and in our everyday societal political life, but the latter is operative in attaining liberation. So that much about dharma. What is dharma sankata? The term dharma sankata appears only twice in the critical edition of the Mahābhārata, one in Stri Parva and again in Shanti Parva. So I am going to just take you to the second occurrence of the term, where it occurs in the Uncha Vrityupakhyaana, which is the final portion of Shanti Parvan. The immediate topic here is Moksha Dharma, and so Shanti Parva, Moksha Dharma Parva, in that Uncha Vrityupakhyaana, this term occurs. The place where it occurs, the context is simple. A Brahmana is starving himself in order to gain audience with a Naga king, and his austerities are causing others to suffer by preventing others, such as the Nagas, from extending guest hospitality. So those of you who know the Taittiriya, Atithi Devo Bhava, and you have to take care of guests. So that is, I think, a more casual meaning of Dharma Sankata. So let us return to the first occurrence, where this occurs in the beginning of Stri Parvan, where Vidura is teaching Dhritarashtra about something called Buddhi Marga. And this is quite important. The blind king has just learned that his sons have been killed. So Janamejaya is asking Vaishambhayana to tell him, what did Dhritarashtra do when he found out that his sons, specifically Duryodhana and Dushasana, have been killed? And Dhritarashtra is grieving. Now, in Shastri Parvan, where this particular occurrence of Dharma Sankata happens, Vidura is giving a lecture in response to the grief of Dhritarashtra, Sri Parvan's Adhyayas 2 to 7. Now, when Shankaracharya is writing, is this right? When Shankaracharya is writing his commentary on the Gita, he's echoing this particular lecture given by Vidura. because Vidura teaches the mystery of rebirth or transmigration and distinguishes it from moksha in this lecture. He likens the man who transmigrates as one who has entered a deep forest, sorry for the typo, and has fallen into a well. He's hanging by a rope, being gnawed at by rats, and surrounded by various kinds of dangers. Through this allegory, Upamana, Vidura makes room for Brahmavada, the teaching of Brahman which grants liberation, paraphrasing it directly from the Kathopanishad. Vidura's lecture says, they say the body of beings is a chariot and the soul is the charioteer. The word here is not jiva but sattvam, but it's fine. The horses are the senses, deeds and thoughts are the reins. He who races along behind these running horses spins around in circles on the wheel of rebirth. So we know this is a paraphrase of what Yama taught Nachiketas in the Kathopanishad. So this Upanishadic Brahman goal, which is the purview of Jnanakanda, is being brought in as a response to grief of Dhritarashtra. So when the term Dharma Sankata occurs in this context, we have to ask, what does Dharma Sankata mean? Is it the death of sons? The ritualistic interpretation says sons uphold the fathers in heaven. Heaven is obtained through sons. So the blind king may have lost his heaven because his sons are dead. So this could be one easy answer to, or an obvious answer to Dharma Sankata. But Vyasa puts the Dharma Sankata question in Dhritarashtra's mouth, and Vidura answers that the Dharma Sankata is actually not the death of the sons, but samsara itself. Thus, the question is not about some specific Dharma Sankata, as Vyasa frames it, but the question of absolute eradication of grief and the attainment of unconditional happiness. Unconditioned by what? By karma and also pravritti dharma. These are limited. Karma is finite, pravritti dharma is also finite. So at the limits of pravritti dharma, Vyasa wants to unfold the doctrine of Brahman. So Vyasa's project is not merely to provide a few proverbs and axioms for difficult times, although I must say Vyasa indeed does that also. But he's encoding Dharma Sankata into the very mechanics of pravritti dharma. This he does on a gigantic, grand scale. It takes your breath away, because he's now saying that the conflict of dharma and adharma is a permanent one. Devasura Yuddha. It happens all the time. And second, over time, dharma declines. See how it does so in the four yugas. For example, in the Krita Yuga, dharma stands on four legs, and now in Kali Yuga, it is standing on one leg. The inevitable suffering of dharma leads the blind ones to grief, but the wise go beyond grief. Brahman, as Krishna Vasudeva, teaches this very thing that Vidura has taught in the Bhagavad-gita. So the Bhagavad-gita is the most apt answer for Dharma Sankata. So if you go back here and say, see how Dharma declines, you will see that God Dharma actually is cursed in the Mahabharata by a rishi called Animandavya. Apparently, when he was a kid, or in a previous life, Animandavya had pierced an insect with a blade of grass. So now Animandavya is, through the automatic function of karma, has become a rishi who's impaled on a stake. We don't need to get into the details of the story, but Animandavya now curses dharma to be born in a shudra womb, shudra yoni. And if you remember that during the yoga, Vyasa had first perform the ritual of niyoga with Vichitravirya's widows, Ambika and Balika, and then one is Pandu is pale, Dhritarashtra is blind, which is a kind of a curse from Vyasa's point of view. Vyasa does not curse them, but he just simply says, your son will be born blind because you closed your eyes, etc. But with the Shudra girl, Vyasa gives blessings to the Shudra girl. It's not clear that the Shudra girl is part of the Niyoga at all. In fact, she's outside the ritual of Niyoga because Niyoga is a strict ritual where you're not supposed to experience pleasure, etc. You're simply supposed to be a sperm donor, whereas the Vyasa is very happy and pleased with the Shudra girl, and he blesses her that God Dharma be born to her as Vidura. This is I think we do not often notice it, but a breathtaking revolution, if you will, or a breathtaking move by Vyasa, that God Dharma is born in what is ritually considered an unclean womb, which is a Shudra womb. Meanwhile, God Dharma also is born as a Pandava through Kunti's mantra, which she has obtained, and a portion of Dharma is born as Yudhishthira. Now, the 100 sons of the Dhritarashtra and Yudhishthira enact the Dharma Yuddha, where Dharma and Adharma fight. It is a Devasura Yuddha because the Kauravas are specifically Asuras, and the Pandavas are the sons of Devas. So the war of Kurukshetra is also a Dharma Yuddha, and at the end of it, Yudhishthira becomes the king, but Vidura, performing yoga, just casts off his body and enters into the body of King Dharma. This is in the Ashramavasika Parvan. And when that happens, Dharma becomes whole again. He becomes healed. And the healing, or the complete healing of Dharma, has happened through Dharma being born in a Shudra womb. So Vyasa has gone to great lengths to kind of dramatize Dharma Sankata. I mean, what could be worse than being cursed to be born as a lowly person and experience all the trials and tribulations that Vidura undergoes? Now, we want to see what is happening in Gita. I will take you now to Gita because Gita is given as a Dharma Shastra in this Dharma Yuddha. So Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre is the opening salvo of the Bhagavad-gita. Drona, Bhishma, and kinsmen stand before Arjuna, ready for battle. Arjuna looks at them all. Teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, as also relatives, and is overcome by horror at the prospect of having to kill his relatives. Thrice he laments as having to kill his own relations. Look at the word swajanam, hatva swajanam, swajanam hikatham hatva, and hantum swajanam. These relationships are thematized by Arjuna in terms of kula and jati. He uses varna only in the compound term varna sankara, where he is concerned with exogamy or miscegenation or mixing up of kulas and jatis. The biological social interpretation of varna requires a closer look. Jati means birth, position assigned by birth, such as rank, caste, race, lineage, etc. Kula means clan, family, community, tribe, etc. Jati and Kula are used synonymously by Arjuna. He cites Kula Dharma, interpreting Dharma according to Papa and Dosha, with the aim of saving oneself from hell, naraka, eternal hell, narake nityam, and sustaining the ancestral heaven. These are elements of pravritti dharma, or justice in its familial, social, political form. This is what keeps the world going. For example, we in America have something called white privilege. Now, white privilege cannot happen if there's exogamy. So it is only through endogamy that privilege maintains itself. Vyasa goes now to deconstruct genealogy. First of all, paternity itself is set aside for something called a ritual niyoga. It is not at all clear to me after a lot of research that there was such a thing called niyoga. Perhaps the Mahabharata is the first, perhaps there did exist a ritual called niyoga. Some scholars have, I think, quite convincingly argued that it is surrogacy, but nevertheless, Vyasa exploits it in a thoroughly literary fashion because nobody who performs the niyoga also writes a book about an epic about the progeny from niyoga. So we have to take Mahabharata's niyoga in a very special way as somehow complicating paternity. Now, inheritance always goes by the eldest son, but the eldest son is consistently disqualified by Vyasa. For example, Shantanu himself was the junior of Devaki who went to the forest. So Shantanu himself is not first choice. On the next level, both Bhishma and Krishnadvaipayana are eldest sons. So is Chitrangada, who, however, is succeeded by the issue of his own younger brother. So Bhishma's son, neither Bhishma nor his children nor his firstborn gets the son, but Krishnadvaipayana gets. Krishnadvaipayana is the eldest son of Satyavati. On the next level, Dhritarashtra is disqualified. In the succeeding generation, Karna is disqualified. The final paternity irony is the Pandavas themselves. They all share the same wife by whom each has a son. But these sons die, and eventually the kingdom descends in a junior line, that of Abhimanyu, who was Arjuna's son by his junior wife, Subhadra. So you see this idea that, there are fathers, they have eldest sons, there is purity of lineage, that you hand over your property and inheritance to the oldest son. You see how Vyasa is deconstructing that at every step. Now, what about Vidura? You know that he's Dharma himself, and at first sight, it seems quite odd that nobody mentions Vidura in the Bhagavad-gita. But let's see whether that is true or not. Gita presents 4 teachings. The first teaching is be a hero, Arjuna. So man up to this, fight bravely, do not give into any kind of kashmalam or weakness at this stage, at this critical juncture. Just get up and fight. But this message is a repetition of a teaching that Kunti sends through Krishna to Arjuna. And the person Kunti says who gives this teaching is a woman called Vidura. Now, obviously, there is Vidura is just a feminine term for Vidura. So encoded in the name is this message that Arjuna should fight. So Vidura appears here, albeit so superficially, just nominally, and that too in the feminine gender. Nevertheless, it would be significant because the Mahabharata is Veda for women and Shudras. The second doctrine that Krishna teaches is that the soul migrates. We saw this in Vidura's teaching earlier. So Krishna is, in a way, saying the same thing Vidura will say or has said in the Strī Parva. The third is Brahman is the highest goal, and the yogis perform Bhagavan, the glorious Lord. This last is the message of Sanat Sujata, whom Vidura summons to teach Dhritarashtra. So in all the teachings of the Bhagavad-gita, Vidura is there in one form or another. Krishna doesn't add anything in his, anything that Vidura is unaware of in terms of dharma. The highest wisdom taught by one whose name means high born. Look at how the Mahabharata is playing. Vidura is Shudra Yoni, the lowest. Sanat Sujata is of the highest birth, it means high born, but yet Vidura can easily summon or access this highest wisdom. So you see how the Kula Jati interpretation of the Varna question is completely dismissed by Vyasa. So even the Karma Yoga teaching has a precedent here. A Shudra who is a Dharma Vyadha presents it to a Brahmana. Krishna listens to Markandeya as this Rishi narrates the episode to Yudhishthira. Okay, this is the diacritics are missing on that. Forgive me. Vyadha's story bears a striking resemblance to Vidura's. In a previous life, the Vyadha can mean hunter, it can mean butcher, it can mean someone who's doing something unclean, at least ritually impure. The Vyadha, who was a Brahmana, accidentally pierced a Rishi in a hunting accident. The Rishi cursed him to be born in the womb of a Shudra woman. Relenting, the Rishi modifies his curse, although born from a serf woman, you shall be a sage of Dharma, Dharmajna. Like Ani Mandavya, the pierced Rishi suffers but does not die. The role they both play is to place Dharma in the womb of a Shudra woman. So Vyasa is not joking here. The whole Dharma descending into the lowest level to uplift everyone opens up the possibility of Mahabharata's version of Hinduism to be the most socially just, the most universal philosophy, because I don't know, Hinduism is more than just a religion. It is also this highest philosophy. Arjuna's question. Did Krishna answer Arjuna's question? Look at how many verses Arjuna has gone on about Varna Samkara, Kula Jati, and all those things. Does Krishna give an answer? Curiously enough, Krishna never uses the words Kula or Jati as an interpretation of Varna. He seems to completely ignore the question of Varna Samkara. But so let us see what Krishna says about Varna. In chapter 4, in verses 13 to 15, Krishna brings up the question of Varnas, but it doesn't go in the direction that Arjuna was going. It goes in a completely different direction. Specifically, there is a critical analysis of karma, especially ritual karma, and there is a supremacy of knowledge and the degrading nature of irrational skepticism. So the Mahabharata is, and the Bhagavad-gita is, and Dharma is an Astika doctrine in the sense that it affirms that the soul survives and suffers the fate of good and bad karmas, and yet even the ritual actions are insufficient an answer, and so knowledge is supreme. So you see how the Jnana-kanda is being upheld. The upliftment of the Shudra is also the upliftment of Brahma Jnana in Vyasa's hands. You all know this. Krishna says, Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasha And so, as many commentators have noted, Krishna is not saying that the four varnas are based on kula, jati, or janma, but on guna, karma. Krishna later on describes the various qualities of brahmanas and so on in chapter 18. None of them have anything to do with birth, etc. So here my point is not to defend any defense of Varna and so on. I just don't want to get into that low level of debate, but point to a better way of looking at Dharma or even Varnashrama Dharma. Vidura is Dharma himself and Vyasa is his authorial father. What does this show? My point is to show that Shudra Yoni Vidura is Dharma Yoni. Indeed, Vyasa has conceived Mahabharata itself as a Dharma Yoni, the womb, the textual womb that contains all Dharma. That great Veda, meant also for women and Shudras, shows the danger of Dharma applied to birth, wealth, privilege, etc. only. By providing a text for all, Vyasa works with Dharma and the source of Dharma, who is Narayana, Sri Krishna Vasudeva, who is Brahman, to show us that Dharma Sankata is the horror of clinging only to ritual texts without seeking Brahman. That is the greatest disaster that can beset Dharma. And the blind king loses his sons and his kingdom as a direct consequence of Vidura not inheriting the throne. Think about what would have happened if Vidura had inherited the throne instead. None of this catastrophe would have happened. Whenever we think about Shudras and we cite texts saying Krishna said that there are four varnas, the Purusha Sukta says that the Shudras were born from the feet of Purusha Narayana. They must remember that Shri herself does not catch on to Vishnu's head or Vishnu's chest or Vishnu's thighs or arms. She's holding on to his feet, right? So look at the Itihasa Purana. It has placed the Shudras in a place Shri herself worships. So with that mental salutation to Narayana, I would like to, and Lakshmi, I would like to also point out that Dharma Sankata essentially is the tendency to read texts only according to the pravritti axis, i.e. historicism. So historical readings are asuric and are Dharma Sankatas. That is the greatest disaster that can beset Dharma texts. Okay, Om Namo Narayana. So any questions? I will answer. If I have gone over my time, I apologize.
You have absolutely not gone over your time, Dr. Adluri. You've finished well in advance of actually what was there on the schedule. So
maybe I just want to go to bed.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful discipline. And while we're seeing if there are any questions specific to Dr. Adluri's presentations that's coming in, I just want to pull this up. And I was reminded of attending your session at National Institute of Advanced Studies, Meaning and History, the Mahabharata as Itihasa, in 2017. So I'm just seeing if there are any questions specific to Dr. Adluri's presentation right now. And we have somebody saying, please type in your... We haven't seen any as yet. We'll just give it a few seconds. And while we do that, I'd like to read out Dr. Adluri's introduction at the close. Again, though I had mentioned it briefly, Dr. Adluri is a professor in the philosophy department at Hunter College, New York, and the author of over a dozen articles and essays on the Mahabharata. His work mainly focuses on the reception of ancient thought, both Greek and Indian, in modernity. He is the author of Parmenides, Plato, and Mortal Philosophy, Return from Transcendence, published by Bloomsbury. The Ney Science, a history of German Indology, was brought out by OUP, and Philology and Criticism, a guide to Mahabharata, textual criticism by Anthem. And he has edited numerous volumes on the Mahabharata, including Argument and Design, The Unity of the Mahabharata, which was published by Brill. Dr. Adluri has a PhD in philosophy from the New School for Social Research, New York, and a PhD in Indology from Phillips University, Marburg, and a PhD in Sanskrit from Deccan College, Pune. Professor Adluri's papers on the Mahabharata are available at the academia link huntercuny.academia.edu /Vishwa Adluri. With that, I'm just seeing if there are any questions. Dr. Adluri, there are a few questions in the Q&A box. If you would, are you able to see them? Are you able to?
No, I will. Now I see them. Yeah. Okay.
If there are any that
So
you find
Prabhu,
specific to your presentation and you would
no,
like to answer, please.
I will answer all. I will respond to all of them, because if somebody has taken the pains to type a question, I would like to acknowledge it.
Wonderful.
Prabhu
Go ahead.
Murthy, thank you again. In the Mahabharata itself, Dharma in the form of a bull stands on one pada, and it's not surprising that Vidura at the shudra is the upholder. Do you see a deeper connection? You're absolutely right. I think that one leg is because in the Itihasa Purana, everybody is born a Shudra and Janmana Jayate Shudra. So then through samskara, we spiritually evolve. So the Varna system is meant to help us guide ourselves in spiritual evolution. And so everyone in the Kali Yuga is at the base point. So I see that connection. It is not clear to me. Of course, Dharma standing on one leg, the form of a bull, is clear in the Bhagavata Purana. But when Parikshit sees this and comes to the bull's rescue, but I do not know if that image occurs in the Mahabharata. I might have overlooked that. I will look it up, but if anybody else knows about it, please enlighten me. Krishna Chaitanya ji, there is a subclassification of the Brahmin, especially in Andhra, called 6,000 yogis. Are they in any way connected to the practice of yogi described in the talk? To the best of my knowledge, no. Yoga is, as I said, a very let's just say, out of the main framework ritual. It's not in the level of Putra Kameshti, etc. At most, we can say it is surrogacy. But as I pointed out, that Vyasa is the Mahabharata is using Niyoga to sort of deconstruct the Vamshanacharita. So, because to deconstruct the Vamsha means to also deconstruct the Karma Kanda. It also means that the whole Pitras thing has to be rethought. So that is all I can say. I do not know if they are connected to. I myself am from Andhra, and there are many things about myself that I find, about my people that I find quite fascinating and puzzling. Naresh Goyalji, even though we say Varna is not caste-based, we see Vidura denied throne due to his birth. Why? Again, that would be an historical reading. So textually, you must properly ask the question in the following way. Why does Vyasa show that Vidura did not get the throne? Right? What is his argument there? The argument is, by doing that, Vyasa is showing you what will happen if you deny either the throne or the job for which one is suited for by guna karma or today we can just call it merit. Okay, so you should, the dangers of not recognizing and honoring merit. Indrani ji, oh, hello Indrani ji. The rishi who had not revealed the identity of the persons that the thieves were after was said to have not observed dharma because he should have saved the lives of the persons being sought by the thieves. It is an interesting and a beautiful question. Only you could have asked this question, Indrani ji, but that would fall in the category of dharma samshaya, because in Hinduism, it's not about dharma, it's not just between dharma and adharma. Even within dharma, there is a clash between one dharma and another dharma. So between Arjuna's Kshatriya dharma, which was his guna karma dharma, as opposed to his birth dharma, which was this kula jati interpretation, that would be dharma sankata. That would be a kind of a dharma samshaya. Samshaya means two opposing interpretations, both of which can be argued for with Shruti and Yukti and Smriti, especially Smriti. But then Dharma Sankata shows the limit of how far you can go with that. If you go too far, if you do not go, keep it within the socio-political universe and don't go beyond that, then there is no way of ultimately upholding dharma. You give in to some kind of, either you have to say that's what the text says and you become some kind of a fundamentalist, or you become a skeptic. And I showed you how Krishna's question on skepticism is linked to this in chapter 4. Mrudula Vijayendra, is Varna system or something like that present in other cultures too, like Greek, etc.? Very good question. Plato, in his dialogue, The Republic, says that there are 4 functions in society that are to be performed by 4 kinds of people. All people are equal, but and they're all the children of Mother Earth. But Mother Earth mixes different metals in them, which is, he says, is just something you should tell yourselves. He does not say this is actually the case. And then he has definitely the rulers, the guardians who are the fighters, the philosophers, and the wage workers who are working on wages. The Brahmanas in the Varna system are entitled to prestige, but they are not entitled to power they have spiritual power, or you can call it, spiritual power, but the Kshatriyas have physical power, and how the Mahabharata puts them together is a different story. It's a big story, but that's not the point. But here, yes, the Greeks do have, at least in Plato, there is this notion of these 4 groups of people. Devan Sharma, how Dr. Adluri perceives the situation of different castes pertaining to Varna society in society today, i.e. Varna is practiced by birth in society. Again, I gave you the example of white privilege, so that's how it is carried on, and it is carried on through endogamy. You cannot prevent people from marrying in their own circuits for a variety of reasons. So that is why Krishna says that Varna is just a feature of Pravritti Dharma, and if you have a problem with it, just seek moksha. So that's one. Then Naresh Goyal. When did the caste system get cast iron based on birth? By the time of Shankaracharya, perhaps already. I was looking into this, thank you for that question, because when he talks about Brahmanas, Krishna, in chapter 18, between verses 46 and 50, you can look it up. Krishna just says these are the gunas of Brahmanas. When Shankaracharya glosses it, he adds the word jati to it. And since then, commentators have either not bothered to clarify that, or commentators have not. So Shankaracharya probably just sort of took it for granted. Shankaracharya tends to do such things. For example, he gives 3 different responses to the question of the shudra in Brahma Sutras, where there is the pseudo shudra, upper shudra section. So Shankaracharya is neither not interested, but it seems that commentators did not take this question too seriously. So it can go both ways. Maybe it was cast iron and they didn't want to pick up that fight, or they just ignored it because they were focused on other issues. But certain commentators, certain Sanskrit commentators like Medhatiti have more strong and views of the caste system which are elitist and privilege based, and we have to remember that Vyasa would not agree with them. So let's just stick to Vyasa here. Okay, making the answers as short as possible. Krishna Chaitanya Ji, while Bhagavan Shri Krishna did not specifically answer Arjuna's question on Varna Sankara. Okay, this, I have to make this window bigger because it's just kidding. What did the later comment? So that's what I just said. So the later commentators sort of take it for granted, and that's why we should go back to the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata, even though we respect our commentators, we have to respect Vyasa more than we respect the commentators. Komal Agarwal. In the Ashramavasika Parva, just before Vidura leaves his body, Yudhishthira goes and lays over his body. This was a ritual practiced by sons on dying fathers. How do we understand this in light of your talk? Megji answered this question. So I do not know. I do not know if he laid on the body. I must have missed that thing. I apologize, but I don't think he does that in the critical edition of the Mahabharata. I will look it up. But he wishes to burn the body or give it a funeral, and he is told that Vidura's body may not be burned. Vidura is to be. And this whole laying on the body of a hero is done by women too. So it's not just a father-son thing, is what I would say, but I'm not an authority on that. Sri Rama. The point of Lakshmi touching the feet of Vishnu and the Shudras emerging from there is really enlightening. But how do you see the fact that usually everybody is cursed to be a Shudra? How do you see that in terms of the Mahabharata? Again, Dharma is working together with Krishna. Dharma is working as Vidura. Dharma is working throughout the Mahabharata to bring forth a certain interpretation of Pravriti Dharma, which is Varnashrama Dharma, as well as distinguishing it and setting limits to Nivritti Dharma and recommending Nivritti Dharma. So that is all I have to say about it. But if one is only interested in money and prestige and stuff, they should rather be, Lakshmi is the best place for them to go. So it works both ways. We are most honored in being close to Lakshmi if we are Shudras, but as Shudras we must try to get better and better because we cannot be just materialistic. Okay. Is it possible to get an okay, that is Krishnaji, you can get my email anywhere. Kanagaraj. Kanagaraj, okay. Ishwaran, Namaste. Vedanta helps individuals moksha. How does it pave the way for social emancipation? It paves the way for social emancipation in a very, very great way by showing the limits and the problems in Varnashrama Dharma and forcing it into a limit situation where the socio-political axis ends. Okay? Remember, the political axis was set up by Prajapati. Mahabharata knows the story of the destruction of Daksha's sacrifice and when Uma requests that of Shiva, so, of Rudra. So in the same way, just think about how wise this tradition is. In the very establishment of Prajapatyam and Prajapatya function, the sacrifice is broken and then put together again. And through that crack, from now onwards, Brahman will always be visible. In the same way, Draupadi, in her tantric form, as a goddess, both pure, because her hair is consecrated with Rajasuya, and as unclean, because she's menstruating. She's clothed, but she's also theoretically being denuded, right? So in many ways, that Shakti force is, Vyasa is summoning that in Draupadi's appearance in the Sabha. Once she appears, the Kuru race or the Kuru Kula or the Kuru Jati is meant for destruction. So very important that if you do not have Vedanta, then our politicians are our ultimate gods. That is not a good situation to be in.
On that note, I must thank you very, very much, Dr. Adluri, for not just sharing your views so readily and accepting to be part of this symposium on on Hariji's invitation, but also taking the time out to answer so many questions. We really appreciate your presence in the symposium. Thank you for sharing your insights. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
And I
Vishwa.
thank especially the people who ask the questions, because you know, you sit for hours and hours in front of my computer. Sometimes most of the time I'm talking to myself, hoping or under the illusion that I'm talking to Vyasa, but I'm actually talking to myself. Maybe Vyasa might throw in his blessing. There is
Absolutely.
one more point I wanted to shoot. Vyasa does not stop at shudra yoni. There is another story called Vyasa Kita Samvada, in which Vyasa has manifested for the benefit of a Kita who is called a Tiryagyoni. Tiryagyoni means an insect which crawls horizontally. So Vyasa's magnanimity, or the function of Mahabharata's magnanimity in the form of Vyasa, goes not just to Shudras. So as much as he goes up beyond even the Prajapati, he goes down to the level of a Kita. And in Lalita Sahasranama, I think there is no Abrahma Kita, is Janani. I think she's called Abrahma Kita, the Janani, is in the Lalita Sahasranama.
Right.
So Vyasa is working with all that feminine tantric stuff.
Awesome. And glad you mentioned that at the end, because our next conference is on Tantra, and that is happening in Bhubaneswar. It's just a week away.